Hello everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going deep into a story about trust, secrets, and standing up for what's right. Imagine a quiet night in Ouagadougou, the main city of Burkina Faso, a country in West Africa. Not long ago, inside the big presidential house, the country's leader, President Ibrahim Traore, was working late. The air felt heavy, like something important was about to happen. Outside, the city was mostly asleep, unaware of the phone call that was about to come. President Traore wasn't like some other leaders. He was young, a former soldier, and many people in his country looked up to him. He believed Africa should be strong and make its own choices. In his office, it was very quiet, except for the tick-tock of an old clock on the wall. Suddenly, a special phone rang. This wasn't just any phone. It was a secret line, only used for calls between the leaders of different African countries. President Traore picked it up. A voice came through the phone, sounding super friendly, maybe too friendly. "My brother Ibrahim." "It's me, Alassane Ouattara, calling from Abidjan." Abidjan is the biggest city in Ivory Coast, a country right next to Burkina Faso. President Ouattara was much older, a leader who had been around for a while. President Traore listened carefully. Sometimes, people who smile the most can be hiding something. Still, he answered politely. "Good evening, President Ouattara." President Ouattara laughed, a sound that didn't quite reach his eyes, even over the phone. "I have great news, my brother," he said. "We found a way to make peace. Solve the problems between Burkina Faso and the big group of West African countries called ECOWAS. We want you to come to Abidjan. Just you. No reporters, no big fuss. A simple meeting between brothers. I promise you'll be completely safe." His voice sounded smooth like honey, but Traore felt a little warning buzz inside. Traore thought for a moment. Why Abidjan? Why his city? "Maybe Ghana would be better," Traore suggested. Ghana was another country nearby, a place that wasn't his country or Ouattara's country. Neutral ground. It felt safer. There was a pause. Then Ouattara's voice changed. "Just a little bit, but enough." It sounded tighter, less warm. No, my brother, it must be here in Abidjan. You have my word. Nothing bad will happen. We are family, remember? Family." That word sounded strange coming from him right now. President Traore knew that sometimes people use words like family and brother when they mean the opposite. He stayed quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, "I will think about it." Ouattara laughed again, too loud this time. Good. But think fast, my brother. Time is very important." Then, the line went dead. Click. President Traore stood up and walked to the window. The quiet, ticking clock suddenly sounded very loud. He felt a strong feeling, like a warning bell ringing in his head. It felt like someone was setting up a trick, like building a spider web to catch a fly. He was almost sure President Ouattara wasn't being honest. Why the rush? Why only Abidjan? He decided he couldn't just trust Ouattara's words. He needed to know the truth. The very next morning, President Traore called a secret meeting. Not with government ministers you see on TV, but with his most trusted friends. People who had been with him through thick and thin. People he knew he could count on completely. They gathered around a plain wooden table. Maps and papers were spread out. Traore spoke calmly. "President Ouattara wants me to go to Abidjan," he told them. "He calls it a peace meeting between brothers. But something feels wrong, very wrong." One of his generals, an older man with wise eyes, asked, "What should we do, Captain?" He used Traore's old army title, showing deep respect. Traore's eyes were sharp. "We find out the real story," he said. "No guessing. I need to know exactly why he wants me there." Soon, Traore's best people were quietly working, like detectives searching for clues. They went to Abidjan and started digging, and what they found was shocking. President Ouattara was having secret meetings, but not about peace. He was meeting with powerful people from France and America. These weren't friendly chats. They were making a secret, dangerous plan. The real plan was this. If President Traore landed his plane in Abidjan, he wouldn't be treated like a visiting leader. He would be arrested right there at the airport. They would say it was for made-up reasons, like crimes against democracy. But the secret orders were even worse. If Traore resisted, the plan was to make sure he never left Abidjan alive. It was a terrible betrayal. And why would President Ouattara do this? In return for trapping Traore, the foreign powers promised Ouattara lots of money, military help, and protection. Basically, Ouattara was trading his African brother for help from powerful countries outside Africa. Traore's team gathered all the proof: secret photos, recordings of conversations, hidden documents, hard evidence that couldn't be denied. Back in Ouagadougou, President Traore listened to the report. He sat completely still, his face like stone, but his eyes burned with a quiet fire. One of his young officers couldn't hold back his anger. He slammed his fist on the table. "They are traitors, Captain. They sold out Africa for money." But Traore simply raised his hand. "Be calm," he said softly. "Anger won't help us now. We won't shout. Not yet." He stood up. A small, cold smile touched his lips. "Tomorrow," he said, "I will call President Ouattara again. And this time, we will let him show the world his true face." The room was silent. Everyone knew the game was about to change. The next evening, as the sun began to set, President Traore was back in his office, ready to make the call. It was quiet again, that strange quiet before a storm breaks. He dialed the number for President Ouattara's office. Ring, ring. Then, Ouattara's smooth voice answered. "My brother Ibrahim, have you decided? Our region needs peace." Ouattara sounded eager. Traore smiled, a smile Ouattara couldn't see. He spoke warmly, pretending to walk right into the trap. "Yes, my brother," Traore said. "I have decided. I am ready to come to Abidjan. For peace, I will do anything." Ouattara practically cheered through the phone. "Excellent. Wonderful. You will be treated like a king here, I promise." Then, Traore's voice changed. It dropped just a little, becoming serious, sending a chill down the line. "Tell me something, brother," he said slowly. "When my plane lands in Abidjan, will your soldiers be there to welcome me or to put handcuffs on me?" Silence. Dead silence on the phone line. The friendly mask Ouattara was wearing cracked. His voice, when he finally spoke, was shaky. "Brother, what are you saying? That's an insult. We are family." Traore leaned closer to the phone. His words were calm, but sharp as knives. "I know about your secret meetings with the French and the Americans. I know about the money they promised you. I know about the plan to arrest me, or worse, and hand me over to them." More silence. It felt like the whole world held its breath. Finally, Ouattara spoke, but his voice was weak, broken. I didn't have a choice," he stammered. "They are too powerful. They promised me protection, but they also threatened my country with big problems if I refused to help them trap you." Hearing this made Traore feel cold inside. No courage. No honor. Just a leader who chose fear and betrayal over standing strong for Africa. But Traore wasn't finished. He spoke clearly now, his voice filled with disappointment. "You sold your brother," he said. "You sold out Africa. And for what? So you could stay in power a little longer, with help from outsiders?" Ouattara tried to find words, but there was nothing left to say. He had been caught. And here's the twist. Ouattara didn't know that this entire conversation, his whole confession, was being recorded. Not just by Traore's team, but also by friendly neighbors in Ghana and Mali who were listening in, ready to back Traore up. The truth was about to explode. Traore ended the call with simple, final words. "Thank you, Mr. Ouattara. You've told me everything I need to know. History will remember what you did." He put the phone down gently. The old clock ticked on. But now, it sounded like a countdown. Tomorrow, the world would hear the truth. Tomorrow, the masks would come off. The next morning, the sun rose over West Africa. But it wasn't just sunlight spreading. It was the truth. At exactly 9 a.m., radio suddenly started playing a recording. Phones lit up with messages. TVs showed emergency news flashes. It was the recording of President Ouattara's confession. Everyone listened. You could hear Ouattara's own voice, trembling. "I had no choice. They promised me protection. They threatened war. They demanded I deliver Ibrahim Traore to them." The reaction was instant. In Ouagadougou, the streets filled with people. But they weren't scared. They were furious at the betrayal and incredibly proud of their president. They shouted, waved Burkina Faso flags, held up signs saying, "We stand with Traore," and "Africa will not be sold." The same thing happened in neighboring Mali and Niger. Thousands of people marched in support of Traore and against the leaders who would betray their own people for foreign favors. Even inside Ivory Coast, Ouattara's own country, people started whispering. Students, workers, even soldiers heard the news. The spell of fear was broken. Everyone saw the betrayal clearly. President Ouattara tried to deny everything. He sent his officials to say the recording was fake, that it was all lies. But it was his own voice. Everyone had heard it. His denials sounded weak and silly. In faraway Paris and Washington, the powerful people who made the secret deal were stunned and angry. Their plan had backfired terribly. Worse, it had woken up a powerful feeling across Africa. People were tired of being pushed around. Back in Ouagadougou, President Traore stood before a massive crowd. He wasn't hiding behind soldiers or walls. He stood among his people. He raised his hand, and the huge crowd became quiet. His voice was strong. "They tried to trap my body," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "But instead, they have set your spirits free." The crowd roared. "They offered me secret deals in chains," he continued. "But today, together, under the bright sun, we promise to build a new Africa. An Africa that is proud, strong, and will never again be ruled by fear or by others." People were crying, tears of joy and pride. Mothers held their children up high. Traore raised his fist. "Long live Burkina Faso! Long live African dignity!" The cheers were deafening. Meanwhile, miles away in Abidjan, President Ouattara sat alone in his fancy office. The powerful man now looked small and defeated. The trust was gone. The respect was gone. His time was running out. The fire didn't die down. People across West Africa wouldn't forget Ouattara's betrayal. Protests grew bigger in Abidjan. Young people chanted, "Africa is not for sale." Ouattara's power crumbled like a sandcastle hit by a wave. His generals left him. His ministers quit. Even ECOWAS, the group he tried to use against Traore, backed away from him. But President Traore didn't waste time gloating. He was busy building. He brought the leaders of Mali and Niger together. They formed a new group, the Sahel Alliance. Just them, African brothers working together. "We learned a lesson," Traore told them. "Sometimes the biggest danger comes with a friendly handshake. From now on, we promise loyalty only to our people and to a free Africa." They all agreed. A new path was being forged. Months passed. The Sahel Alliance started working together, building roads, schools, trading with each other, growing stronger on their own terms. Then came a big moment. President Ibrahim Traore traveled to New York City to speak at the United Nations, where leaders from all over the world meet. The huge room was silent as he stepped up to speak. He spoke clearly and simply. "For too long," he said, "the world has looked at Africa with pity. They thought we were helpless children who needed saving. They told us what to do, how to think." Some world leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Traore's voice grew stronger. "But we are not children. We are not beggars. We come from great kingdoms and proud people. Today I stand here for a new Africa. An Africa that is proud. An Africa that makes its own decisions. We don't ask for permission anymore. We will work with the world," he declared. "But as equals, on our terms. Africa will not be used anymore. Our dignity is not for sale." There was a pause. Then, slowly, applause started. It grew louder and louder. For the first time in a long time, the world was hearing an African leader who refused to bow down. Back home, across Africa, people watched on TVs and phones. They cheered, they danced, they cried tears of pride. They saw in President Traore a reflection of their own hopes for a truly free and respected Africa. President Traore didn't just escape a trap, he turned the tables. He exposed betrayal, inspired millions, and reminded the world that Africa's destiny belongs to Africans. His story shows that courage, honesty, and unity can be more powerful than any secret plot. Africa was waking up, and its future looked brighter than ever.